Hey, what's up YouTube? DUBKDAD. Talk to you guys about the rise in popularity of past formats, especially GOAT control, GOAT format as they're calling it now. Back in the day when I played, it was called cookie cutter chaos because everybody ran the same 35 cards, and then you had the 5 slots for personal tech, whether it be dust tornadoes or additional Sakuretsu armor. Maybe you wanted to main deck a enraged battle ox for your 19th monster, because back then, decks only ran like 17 monsters, 18 monsters max, and then people would throw in like a Mystic Swordsman level 2 or enraged battle ox or berserk gorilla to get over the air knights, that kind of thing. But it's what people say, it's a more skill intensive format, and at the same time there were very few plays that could be made that just derped on you on the first turn. The biggest play that you could get derped on the first turn, it was Delinquent Duo. If your opponent opened the Unholy Trinity Duo Pot Graceful, they went up 2 cards on you, but you didn't lose the game right there. If you got wind up looped, you could, even if they only hit 2 cards out of your hand because they fucked up or something, you probably still lost that because they could set a solemn warning or whatever and then finish the loop, and you're completely screwed. But there wasn't anything of that nature back then. Yeah, of course, you could get, FTK'd, or I should say, it's basically an FTK, last turn, or, if you ran those random people playing shitty Rescue Cat FTK. For those who don't know what that is, it requires 1 Rescue Cat with all the targets in the deck and 2 Last Wills. So you play your 2 Last Wills, then you summon Rescue Cat, tribute, get out Des Koala and Mindless Radiant. Then Last Will will kick in, get second Rescue Cat, tribute it, and you get another Mindless Radiant and another Des Koala, and then the second Last Will kicks in and you get Cannon Soldier. Well, your Mindless Radiant boosts all Earth monsters by 500, so you have two 2600 attack Des Koalas, 2 1500 attack Mindless Radiance, and then your Cannon Soldier. So you got 26 plus 26 is 52, plus 3000 is 82, plus Cannon Soldier, which is 14. But for whatever reason it didn't work out main phase 2. You just popped off your whole field for additional 2500. And that's basically how that worked. It had some really inconsistent hands. You could stall and clear the field, and then when you're ready to go off, you go Last Will, Cat, and go off. Really sacky. I used to hate playing against that shit. But other than that, there were no consistent like dirt on you and you lose in the first couple turns. I mean, like I said, your opponent can open the Unholy Trinity on you and you could get back in the game in about 10 turns. I mean, how awesome is that to be able to play 10 plus turns? At the end of the game, you probably have 4 cards left in deck. And not because your opponent was like milling you or decking you out or something with some kind of crazy Morphing Jar, Cyber Jar loop, because that was around back then too. It was just that you could get through your deck, you could actually set up combos, that were elaborate, and it weren't just like, oh, I summoned Tour Guide, ooh, I made Zen Mighty, ooh, I reveal Shark, ooh, look your hand, come on. That shit didn't exist back then. And, players, especially people who played back then, are gravitating toward that. Talk about some of the players of that time. You got Comic Odyssey, Team Overdose. I don't know exactly who was on those teams. I mean, like Max Suffrage. I think he was on Comic Odyssey maybe. I know Inch 95 will correct me and put all kind of random shit in my comments section. But you know, you had those guys, Ryan Hawakawa, Anthony Alvarado, Tyrese Wiggums, whatever, can't remember his name, and a lot of other notable players from, even Jonathan LeBounty. Jesus Christ, that dude's been topping Shonen Jumps and YCS's forever. I remember sacking him hardcore at YCS Dallas. He was running 6 Sams and I was running Plants. But he was a little salty at that win. But anyway, but still, he's a better player than I am. And yeah, so he's been playing again. You know, he played back then. And to talk about the format, you could always tell. Well, I should say, playing people now, you can tell that they weren't good back then, because believe it or not, Graceful Charity was essentially a skilled card to the degree that you don't play it right away. You could always tell the bad kids as soon as they drew Graceful, and they either were at even card advantage, because card advantage meant everything back then. Now card advantage means nothing. They would just play it right away with no good discards. You never play Graceful Charity unless you had this fucker in your hand. Save Charity till you have Serpent. It's like my best advice. These two were made for each other. You know, later on in Elemental Energy, Gold and Silver were released. So you play your Charity and you ditch your Serpent and your Gold, and you're like, free 2,300. But yeah, they'll just play it and they'll dump like good shit. They'll dump like, oh shit, I'll dump both of my crossouts that I just drew, and then you go proceed to set your Magician of Faith, and then you cross out their faith or whatever, you know, because you set one, you got one in hand, and you just made them lose all their faiths. They can't get their Graceful back. Another thing I see really bad kids do who weren't good back then and trying to play now is they'll play their Unholy Trinity, or even a portion of it. They'll play Pot and Graceful, and then they'll set Magician of Faith. I mean, how obvious is that? I mean, of course I drew the Nobleman of Crossout. The fucker was at, I think, 2 or 3 back then. So yeah, I drew the Crossout, and I'm crossing out your Faith, because there's no way I'm going to let you go up another 2 cards on me. Yeah, I lose mine, but at least I'm punishing you for being so bad. But yeah, I know Inch 95 is going to bitch again. Why'd you knock Faith if you hadn't got to use yours yet? Because he went +2 on me. Damn it, I'm mad. I'm salty. Don't go +2 on me, then set Faith. I'm not having it. Something else. Freaking Metamorphosis. Metamorphosis. You guys all know how that worked. You abuse the shit out of this guy with scapegoats, hence goat control. You know, in phase, goats, whatever. Metamorphosis, suck up their monster, do shenanigans. They have to set a monster, or they just summon a monster and then pass turn. If you didn't have the Tsukiyomi Book of Moon and they summoned a monster like a dumbass, you attack their monster with Thousand Eyes Restrict. The equip gets destroyed. Main phase 2, you suck up their monster. Or if you have the Tsukiyomi Book, you summon Suki, book your Thousand Eyes, flip summon it, suck up another monster, and then you just had him in a tear lock. You know, everybody called him, he's T-E-R, tear. You had him in a Thousand Eyes Restrict lock, tear lock. Another cool thing about back then is people got guard locks so often. This shit was so funny. Gravekeeper's Guard. You know, of course, remember, this is cookie cutter chaos time. Everybody's playing the same 35 cards. So the biggest normal summonable monster that most people played was Breaker with a counter, or Blade Knight when you only had 1 card in hand. And to anybody who played in that format, how hard was it to have Blade Knight and just 1 card in hand? You'd have to summon Blade Knight and then set everything, you know, for him to be 2,000. And then you attack, and it's not a guard or a faith, it's a spy. So you're like, fuck. That's why a lot of people around here, we main deck Berserk Gorilla. Shout out to you, J Cam. He was one of the first people I saw running Berserk Gorilla back in the day, because people were, were getting an Air Knight, and it's like, yeah, what you gonna do? I got Air Knight, bitch. He's 19. Well, So Berserk Gorilla says what? And you just like beat on her face because Berserk Gorilla was like a beast, literally. Also, Berserk Gorilla traded with Vampire Lord. Vampire Lord was so huge back then. You know, made trap holes, torrentials, mirror force, Sakuretsu armor. You know, lightning vortex, made all this shit useless with Vampire Lord. And then later on, Siegfried Nephthys, but that's another story. But you know, going back to it, if I had the knowledge today that I did, if I had the knowledge then that I have today, there's so many things I would have done differently. You know, the knowledge of deck building, the knowledge of card interactions. You know, when everybody was running cookie cutter chaos, you know, I've always been the same kind of deck builder and player. I did not like running what everybody else was running because it was just so damn predictable. And you know, back in the day, I was kind of beast. I can pop my collar a little bit. I used to wreck regionals. I never got the opportunity to go to a jump in those early days because you know my kids were young at the time, and you know I was working 3 jobs at the time because my kids were young, and you know just couldn't afford to travel to those events. I can now because they're all grown and whatnot, but at the time I couldn't, so I could go, you know, make the short little 2-hour drive to Oklahoma or Oklahoma City or Tulsa, you know, back in 04, 05, early 06, that kind of thing. And I would just devastate regionals because everybody was running cookie cutter fucking chaos, and I was running Warrior Toolbox, and Warrior Toolbox wins because, you know, a good friend of mine, Blake Branson, he no longer plays. He used to be a member of Team DKF. He's like, you set Spy. And I never understood why people ran Spy. I mean, the defense was amazing floater for its time, but he got wrecked by Mystic Swordsman level 2. And then what are you going to do? Summon Sangan and crash it? I mean, that's all you could do because I ran triple Sakuretsu armor, so I would, you know, in phase Dust Tornado your back row, set my Call the Haunted, summon Mystic Tomato, attack all you Sakuretsu, Call the Haunted on Mystic Swordsman, pop. You know, then set my Sakuretsu. What are you going to do? You're going to summon something, you're going to set. Because so many people ran, you know, defensive monsters. They ran the face and the spies. You know, they barely had monsters that they could normal summon and attack. You know, everybody only ran 17. Blake and I had the brilliant idea of running 21 monsters. And, you know, we didn't run Metamorphosis. You know, Metamorphosis was a good card, obviously. But it was like, why did we want to fusion off our monsters? You know, just control the game. So instead of Metamorphosis, we ran 2 Reinforcements of the Army. Didn't run any Spirits because, you know, we didn't need them. You know, we toolbox answers. Open Field, Rhoda for Don Zalug. You got that Reaper that I attacked into with my DD Assailant because I ran 2. Okay. Next turn, I'm going to Rhoda for Ninja Grandmaster Sasuke. You guys remember that card. 800 attack, 1000 defense, light. When he attacks a face-up defense position monster, destroy it. He's the opposite Mystic Swordsman level 2. Mystic Swordsman 2 hits face downs. Ninja Grandmaster Sasuke hits face-ups. So, you know, it's just like a perfect toolbox. So, like I say, you know, 2 DD Assailants. You know, you had the Warrior Lady, of course. So you could just toolbox everything. And then, you know, of course I had my floaters. I ran Dekoichis. And I ran 1 Mobius. Yeah, I ran Dekoichis and I ran Mobius. I didn't run Jinzo because I ran kind of a trap-heavy deck. But, you know, that's how we played back then. So, you know, we didn't... I'm trying to think of some of the other spells we didn't run. I don't think I ran Snatch Steal because the only tribute I ran was Mobius. I know Snatch Steal is good and move monsters out the way, but, you know, I also ran Smashing Ground. So, you know, even back then I was kind of like an anti-meta player, and people couldn't deal with it because, you know, I'm slapping the monster on the board against the answer. Oh, I have new threat. I'm going to Rhoda for a new answer, you know. And that's how I played back then. And like I said, going back, if I could go back, there's so many different things I would change. I mean, so many things, going through old cards, rebuilding this decks from that format. You know, I see a lot of things where things could have been improved. You know, everybody was just like maxing out on scapegoats, maxing out on metamorphosis, just so they can, you know, play goat control, just metamorphosis, blah, 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 blah. You know, not realizing that the answer to all the massive goat control shit was side-decked Possessed Dark Soul. Yes, I side-decked 2 of those. You know, they would in-face goats, metamorph my shit, and I'm like, okay, my turn. Possessed Dark Soul tribute. Take your remaining goats and your Thousand Eyes Restrict. You know, summon Tsukuyomi into my trap hole, please. So, like I said, you know, there's some of the things that I knew, but, you know, going back, there's a lot more things. I mean, I didn't realize till later on how amazing Bottomless Trap Hole was back then. I knew Sakuretsu Armor was the shit, but Bottomless, oh my god, people say, well, Bottomless was defeated by Jinzo. Well, Bottomless also raped Vampire Lord and Air Knight, Sacred Phoenix of Nephthys, DD Salient, Breaker, Blade Knight, you know, Dark Dust Spirit, because some people cited Dark Dust Spirit, or main deck Dark Dust Spirit, Mobius. So, you know, Bottomless was a beast, and I didn't realize that, because, you know, main people played all the little weenies, but occasionally, you know, they dropped that Mobius on it ass, and I'm like, fuck. Oh, Bottomless on Blackluster Soldier, that would hurt people's feelings. Usually the out the Blackluster Soldier was Ring of Destruction or Mirror Force. You know, there was no, or Torrential, but, you know, they would just premature call it back. If you guys want to see, or you guys want to watch more videos about me talk about the past formats, I'm looking at the time now. It's 17 minutes. Jesus Christ! I'm making a Great Falls, Montana length video. I'll be happy to talk about it. I mean, I can talk about this shit for days. I mean, you know, the bajillion card fusion decks we used to use back then. Some of the, I could feature, you know, some of the text back then. You know, it just, you know, whatever. I could talk about this shit for days, because